Hey guys, today I'm going to go through the exercises that I do for the pancake exercise. I haven't actually trained this for about a year, so this is what I'm going to do to get back into it. Of course, when you're training mobility work, then you are always training your joint capabilities, so it's not like I'm completely fresh new at this in the last year. So yeah, I've not specifically done this exercise, but I have been working my joints. So if you are new to this and you haven't done any mobility training, then it might take you a little bit longer and you might need to regress some of these a little bit. But if you are mobility training, then this is something that you can get right into. For warm up, I'm just going to do some light movements before getting into the deeper end range stuff. So for this, if you have limited internal external rotation, you might want to point your toes out the way. Regardless, I prefer pointing my toes out the way because it's more comfortable. And from here, I'm using my hands to grab my body weight and focusing on keeping my heel down. So say you have limited ankle dorsiflexion, probably do a bit of ankle dorsiflexion before going into this part. But from here, we're using our hands to be able to get into a full lateral lunge or Cossack. And once we get comfortable with this, we can then start swapping around, going into a deep lunge and getting into hip extension as well. And I'm only going down as far as I'm comfortable. So say my hip extension is limited and it's starting to twist my hips and pull my back, I'm just going to stop up here. But yeah, that's about as far as I'm comfy to go. And this is basically just something that I'll do for about 2 to 5 minutes before moving on to the next exercises. Okay, so for QL reaches, you can get into sort of half straddle, so one leg is bent, or you can do it in a complete straddle, but it's just a little bit more comfortable to do it in a half straddle. I'm going to push my hands together to create some tension, and that's going to help me ever so slightly disengage the QL, but regardless, you do need about 5 to even 20 reps before this starts feeling comfortable. So I'm going to go for about 10 reps and then I'm going to reach overhead towards my foot. Now the key here is to keep both the hips down so that you don't end up lifting your bum as you come up, because that's quite an easy thing to do in terms of a compensation. But just basically reach as far as you're comfy to. Okay, so next exercise, we're just playing around with moving towards each foot. So I'm going to reach towards this side as far as I'm comfortable to, and then aiming for ribs down towards the ground. Because of course I can reach my upper body and then it'll just arch, so actually what I'm doing is I'm reaching ribs to the ground instead. So it's like I'm trying to fold from the bottom here rather than from the top of my body. All right, so for the pancake push, you're basically going to use a ball. So I'm using this ball, but you can actually use dumbbells. I've used those before. And what you're going to do is you're going to get into your pancake and push the object as far as you possibly can. Obviously, don't push it so far that you can't contract anymore. What you want to do is once you get to that point where you're really reaching, you're contracting and actually feeling compression work there. So you're going to feel your core kick in and your arms kick in, and try to breathe out as you go forward. I'm doing 5-second pauses because since I've last worked on my straddle, since I've last worked on my pancake, it's probably been about a year. So this is where I'm at today without practicing it for a year. And so I'm starting with 5 seconds. But once you start doing this on a regular basis, you could easily start doing 15 seconds or even 20. Okay, so next we're doing straddle good mornings. You can do these at different ranges. So when I first started doing them, I was around here. And that's where you could probably load up the most. But if you're going for range, you can go quite wide and go for a really light weight or just body weight to begin with. And just maintain that hinge so that you don't end up arching, but you're maintaining that nice straight back, and then coming back up. So I'm going to do two variations. I'm going to do basically one where I can load it up with a decent weight, and another one where I can focus on range. Okay, so with the good mornings and with the straddle good mornings, it all really just depends on where you find that stick point with your hip hinge. So obviously, as you are in a narrow stance, when you go down into your hip hinge, you'll feel that stretch in your hamstrings and your glutes, and that's your cue to stop, because obviously if you go any further, you're going to start curving your back. So that's basically what I'm looking for. I'm going slowly down, and then when I feel that stretch, I come back up, and I'm squeezing my core and my glutes and my hamstrings to do so. But at the same time, you don't really necessarily feel everything because it's kind of in a mild stretch. So with the wide stance ones, it's very much just a case of going really slow so that you can feel when you've hit that point where you're at a stretch, and then you're going to come back up. And usually the wider you are, the harder it is to come back up. So I'd strongly recommend very slowly bringing your feet wider as you practice where that point is. Another tip would be to actually film yourself from the side so that you can see what's going on with your back. So when you're progressing with this, you can film yourself, and then you might feel exactly when that stretch point is when you're meant to come back up, but perhaps you are going further than you should do and your back is bending a little bit. So you don't really want to do that, especially when you start loading yourself up. It's just going to be way too much pressure on your back versus where you want it to be, which will be in your thighs. All right, so the next thing I really like to add in is middle split isometrics. So I'm just going to get into that stretch point. And if you've not done this before, just go nice and steady. Just gonna get to that point where, okay, so I'm just thinking of scissoring my legs shut, and I'm gonna hold this isometrically for 10 seconds. So usually I'll do 10 seconds for 3 sets, but I also like to start to increase the range sometimes. So I'm going to use a bench. Sometimes if I'm in the gym, I can actually use a band overhead, but I don't have that set up. So I'm going to use a bench, and I'm going to hold onto it a little bit so that I end up not having all my body weight on it, but I'm continuing to do the isometric. So now I can get a lot lower down, and I've got a lot of my body weight on my arms. And I'm still going to isometrically contract, squeezing my legs together so that I feel the adductors kick in. I'm going to hold it for 10 seconds. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to subscribe, and if you want to join the 4-week challenge that we've got going on, all you need to do is check the link in the description. What we're doing is giving away 1 free workout per week, which is joint specific, complete with a PDF guide on that joint. So it's kind of like education and training at the same time.